All right, so let's see what happens when we have a coefficient of something other than a 1. Okay, there's a slightly different set of rules you have to pay attention to when this happens. Okay, the majority of the steps are going to be the same. So the first thing is we're going to group x terms. So our first step is to group these x terms. Now, as we do this, we're also going to factor out the leading coefficient. Okay, so here our leading coefficient is the 2. So when we group these, the 1 can stay where it is, or the -1. But we're going to remove a 2 from both of those x terms. So taking a 2 out of a 2x squared leaves x squared, and taking a 2 out of an 8x leaves 4x. Okay, again, by doing this step to start with, what we now are able to do is work with leading coefficient of 1 when we complete the square. Okay, so we're going to complete the square. We take half of our b value, so half of plus 4 is plus 2, square it. 2 squared is 4. We're going to add that to both sides. Or I'm sorry, we're going to add that to the inside, but we're going to remove it from the outside. And now, here's where you have to pay careful attention. You have to keep in mind the leading coefficient. Okay, and the reason for that is in blue here you see what's added to the equation that wasn't already there, this plus 4. But it's not just a plus 4, it's a plus 4 times what? 2, which is a total of plus 8. So when we undo it on the outside of the grouping symbols, we need to undo the whole thing. So we need to undo 4 times 2, which is a -8. Okay? So this number right here okay, so this product right here must be undone, is what the words say, in order to balance our equation. Okay, so 4 times 2 is 8. We undo that by subtracting the same value on the outside. Okay, and then we can rewrite it as a binomial square. And so we have the 2 out front, we have our binomial square, first term x, the second term is going to be half of this coefficient, so half of plus 4 is plus 2. Combine our terms on the outside, and we get our vertex form. All right, so again, try one on your own, see if you can get this. All right, so if we look at the process, group the x terms in parentheses by factoring out that leading coefficient. So the leading coefficient is a 3. That leaves an x squared. It leaves what for our middle term? Plus 4x. Again, leave a space to complete the square. And then the constant can go outside on its own. All right. We'll move to the next step, which is the process of completing the square. So we're going to take half of our first degree term's coefficient, so half of b. Half of plus 4 was again a plus 2. We're going to square that. Positive 2 squared is plus 4. We need to balance our equation, so we're going to subtract it from the outside. But remember, we aren't just adding a 4 in here, we're actually adding a 4 times 3 or 12. So we have to undo that whole thing to the outside. So minus a 12 from the outside. Okay, and now we can finish by rewriting this as a binomial square. Our binomial terms that you can square to give this trinomial are x, and then half of this b terms coefficient, so plus 2, quantity squared, and then combine the terms here. You're left with a negative 10. And so this would be your vertex form. So the vertex would be negative 2, negative 10. If you had to identify it, the axis of symmetry would be x equals negative 2.